Hi, this is Bill. I'm the salty old Marine. What's a Nexus letter? Well, let's talk about that in this video. So a Nexus letter is really just a medical opinion. All it really says is that a licensed medical professional believes that condition A is related to condition B, or that condition A today is related to condition A then. So that's what a Nexus letter is. So why do you need one? Well, the answer is you don't always need one, but they can be very useful in the appropriate circumstances. And let's talk about what those circumstances might be. So as we've talked about in the past, in order to have a successful VA claim for disability, you're going to need an in-service event, something that happened while you were serving. Then you're going to have a current diagnosis. So a doctor then had to say that you had, for example, migraines, and a doctor today must say that you have, for example, migraines. Now, what the VA is going to want to know is, excuse me, how are they connected? Is your migraine that you're experiencing today the same as your migraine that you experienced while you were in the service? Well, that's called a nexus. That's the connection between the two, right? So there are lots of ways that you can develop a nexus. One of the ways that it happens is when you file your claim, if you do not provide a nexus letter, and you get sent to a C&P exam, a compensation and pension exam, which most of us will, the C&P examiner will write a nexus letter. In other words, they will provide their medical opinion as to whether or not the then and the now are connected. However, they don't work for you, and they have no motivation whatsoever to say that they are connected, especially if they don't think that they're connected. In addition to that, you're not going to be able to see what their opinion is. It goes into the rating office, but it's not visible to you unless at some point you get a copy of your claims file, your C file as they call it. So how do we deal with this? Well, if you have a presumptive condition, meaning say you have a condition that's covered under the PACT Act, right, from the burn pits or from Agent Orange in Vietnam or from Camp Lejeune, if you are in fact covered by one of those conditions, it is presumptive. You do not need to provide a nexus because that nexus is by law already there. So no need for a nexus, it's there. However, let's say you're filing a secondary claim. So, for example, you have been rated with PTSD and you're trying to file a claim for a secondary condition to something like sleep apnea. Well, that's a bit of a longer haul. So now you're going to want to prove to the VA that, first of all, you have PTSD and you're service connected for it. Second, you have sleep apnea, and that's a current diagnosis. And then, a connection between the two. Well, how do we know that your sleep apnea is caused by or made significantly worse by your PTSD? That almost always calls for a nexus letter. So where do you get a nexus letter? Well, as I mentioned, a nexus letter is a doctor's statement. That is to say, a medical professional who is experienced in that particular field. So psychologists, for example, can opine on things related to mental conditions. So can psychiatrists. Medical doctors can opine on things related to medical conditions. Under some circumstances, but not always, nurse practitioners, chiropractors, physical therapists, and other medical professionals who are licensed can also write a nexus letter. Where do you get a nexus letter? Well, you can try getting a nexus letter from your VA doctor if you're being treated by the VA. You will probably find that they will not give you one. There's a lot of reasons for that. Probably they will tell you they're not allowed to. Strictly, that's not true. They are allowed to, but they believe that they're not, and they're just not going to do it. Private doctors, also a bit of a tough job to get that done. Your private doctor is there to provide medical assistants. They are not there to write legal terminology, and they may refuse to do so. Worse, they may agree to do it and do it badly, because a Nexus letter contains some very, very critical information. It contains your condition, right? So veteran so-and-so has thus and so. Great. It contains all the records about how these two things might be related. For example, there are a dozen scientific studies showing the relationship between PTSD and obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA, with cites to every single one of those. Is your doctor going to do that? They probably don't even know what those studies are, so yeah, chances are they won't. And then in addition to that, they've got to provide the exact legal terminology that the VA wants, at least as likely as not. So in other words, there can't be any question at all. They can't just make a general statement like, I think that this veteran's current OSA is connected to their PTSD. It's probably not going to be strong enough for the VA. So there's some very specific legal terminology, and your doctor's probably not familiar with it. So unfortunately, even though your doctor is a great resource for saying whether or not your condition is related to another condition, probably not the best resource for writing a Nexus letter, unless they've got experience doing that and know exactly what goes into it. So what does that leave? Well, unfortunately, it leaves us in the realm of obtaining a paid Nexus letter. And there are plenty of professionals out there who are ready, willing, and able to provide you with a record review, perhaps a medical interview or a physical visit, and then write a Nexus letter, if appropriate, which covers your condition and your claim. Now, if you're paying for one, first of all, the downside is it's going to cost some money, and sometimes that money is significant. So you're going to have to weigh that against what the possible advantages are. What I mean by that is, if I were filing for a claim that at the very most might get me 10%, I'm not sure I want to pay thousands of dollars for a Nexus letter to get that 10%. Unless it's something that's just about to bump me from the last 90% to 100%. In that case, I very well might. That's actually worth a significant amount of money. But for a small claim, yeah, might not do it. So think about that in terms of how you want to spend your money, right? Second of all, there are some Nexus letter writers out there who are, shall we say, in it for the money. That is to say, they've got some form letters and they just crank them out, because many claims are fairly standard. So, for example, the PTSD to sleep apnea that I mentioned, that's not uncommon at all. And the scientific studies are going to be the same, and a lot of veterans are going to have very similar treatment records and histories, and they might just boilerplate it. And believe it or not, the VA doesn't care for that. So you're going to have to shop for a Nexus letter writer who is very well qualified and understands what needs to go into a Nexus letter, and who is not just like a diploma mill kind of thing, you know, just cranking out those form letters left, right, and center. That's a tough one, but that's kind of what you have to do. You can find those through law firms that specialize in veteran claims. You can find those on your own through Google searches. I would look for reviews and references. I've found a couple myself that I've been very pleased with. I'm working with one right now for exactly that claim, PTSD to obstructive sleep apnea. So it's up to you, but something you might consider. Now, why do you need the Nexus letter? Well, the C&P examiner is going to write a Nexus letter. You won't see it, but they'll write one. Let's say it's negative. Let's say they decide that, hey, salty old Marine, your obstructive sleep apnea is definitely not related to your PTSD. Well, if there's no other information to the contrary, I'm going to lose that claim. However, if I have submitted a Nexus letter from a professional who has well documented my particular circumstances and scientific studies that show that there is a link between the two, then what we have is a standoff, right? What we end up with are two competing medical professional opinions. And fortunately for us, the VA says that when the balance is in equipoise, meaning equally balanced on both sides, 50-50, the veteran gets the win. So that's good news for us. And again, that's why a Nexus letter can be very important. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. Tell me about your experience with Nexus letters. This is Bill. I'm the Salty Old Marine. Please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a comment. And as always, have a great day.